Mia wandered through the edge of town, kicking pebbles along the cracked pavement. It was another gray afternoon in the small, lifeless village she called home. The sky was a dull shade of white, the color of faded memories. Mia had always felt like an outsider here, as if she didn't quite fit in with the mundane rhythm of everyday life. Today, though, her wandering feet took her farther than usual, down a narrow, forgotten alleyway overgrown with weeds. The air smelled different here, cool and sharp, almost magical. At the end of the alley, Mia spotted a weathered stone archway, half covered by ivy. It was odd. She had walked these streets many times before and never noticed it. Curiosity pulled her forward. She pushed aside the ivy and stepped through the archway into a place unlike anything she had ever seen. It was a garden, but not a garden of ordinary plants and flowers. Everything here was made of glass. The trees with their delicate leaves, the flowers with their petals like shimmering crystals. Even tiny birds perched on glass branches. The light of the overcast sky filtered through the glass creations, casting rainbows on the ground. Mia's breath caught in her throat. It was beautiful, but fragile, as if a single touch could shatter it all. She knelt down, reaching towards a glass flower. Her fingers hesitated, hovering above its sharp, translucent petals. As soon as her fingerprints brushed the glass, it warmed under her hand. The flower began to glow, the glass melting away, replaced by soft, vibrant petals of deep red. Mia gasped, pulling her hand back. The flower was alive now, real and fragrant. It stood out against the rest of the glass garden, a burst of color in a sea of pale reflections. What is this place? Mia whispered to herself. She couldn't look away from the transformed flower, its vividness startling against the glass landscape. She glanced around, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. Nothing else had changed, only the single flower she had touched. Mia took a deep breath and reached out again, this time to a glass bird sitting on a branch. As soon as her hand made contact, the bird fluttered its wings, the glass feathers turning into a flurry of blue and green. It chirped, a sweet sound that echoed through the silent garden. Mia stumbled back, wide-eyed. Her hands tingled with warmth, as if the life she had given to the bird had flowed through her too. She looked around the garden, her heart racing. It was as if she had stumbled into a place that had been waiting for her all along. For the first time in years, Mia felt a spark of something she thought she had lost. Wonder. She left the garden reluctantly as the sun began to set, but she knew that she would return. The glass garden had awoken something inside her, something she couldn't ignore. Mia couldn't wait to return to the garden the next day. As soon as school ended, she sprinted back to the hidden archway, her heart pounding with anticipation. She slipped through the ivy-covered entrance and found herself standing once again in the glass garden. It looked exactly the same as she had left it, cold, crystalline, and still. Except for the flower and the bird she had touched yesterday. They stood out vividly, splashes of color against the sea of glass. Mia approached the glass tree this time, its branches sparkling like diamonds in the sunlight. She hesitated, then placed her hand on the trunk. It felt cool at first, but then warmth spread from her fingers, seeping into the glass. The trunk shimmered, and the bark softened into rough, living wood. The leaves turned from transparent shards into lush green foliage, rustling in a sudden breeze. She laughed out loud, the sound echoing through the garden. The transformation filled her with a joy she hadn't felt in a long time. It was as if she was painting life onto a blank canvas, using her hands as a brush. One by one, she touched more glass objects, a butterfly frozen mid-flight, a vine curling around the stone bench. Each time they transformed, bursting into life with vibrant colors and movement. The garden was changing before her eyes, and with every touch, Mia felt a piece of herself waking up too. But as she continued, she noticed something strange. When she touched a small glass deer, it came to life and looked at her with eyes that seemed to hold a sadness she couldn't quite place. It nuzzled her hand gently, and a wave of emotion crashed over her, a memory she had buried deep. It was the day she lost her father. She had been small, just a child, holding his hand as they walked through a garden. He had picked her up and spun her around, her laughter mingling with the sound of birds singing. It was a memory filled with light and love, but it had been overshadowed by the pain of the sudden death soon after. Mia stumbled back, pulling her hand away from the deer. It stared at her for a moment longer, then trotted away into the depths of the garden. She had sat down on the stone bench, her hands trembling. The joy she had felt was now tinged with sadness, a reminder of the loss she had tried so hard to forget. She realized the garden wasn't just a magical place, it was connected to her, a reflection of her own heart. Mia looked around at the half-glass, half-living garden and took a deep breath. The transformation wasn't complete yet, and neither was she. She knew what she had to do. To bring the garden fully to life, she would have to face the memories she had buried and the dreams she had abandoned long ago. Mia returned to the garden the next day with a mix of excitement and dread. The vibrant patches of life she had created glimmered in the morning light, but the majority of the garden remained still and cold, a testament to her unresolved past. As she walked deeper into the glass forest, her reflection stared back at her from every surface, a younger version of herself trapped behind the gleam of transparent leaves and frozen flowers. Mia hesitated before touching another glass object. Her fingers hovered over a bird's nest filled with glass eggs, but she pulled back, her chest tightening. She couldn't ignore the heaviness in her heart. Each time she brought something to life, it tugged at memories she had long tried to forget. "Why is this happening?" Mia whispered out loud, her voice echoing softly in the glass garden. As if in response, a gust of wind blew through the trees, making the glass branches chime like delicate bells. Mia took a deep breath and forced herself to touch the nest. The glass eggs warmed under her fingertips, turning to smooth, speckled shells. One of the eggs cracked open, and a tiny bird emerged, chirping its first sweet notes. The sound pierced through her like an arrow, pulling her back to a memory she had locked away. She was 5 years old, sitting on her father's shoulders as they explored a park near their home. He pointed to a bird's nest high up in a tree, explaining how the mother bird cared for her young. Mia remembered the awe she felt, the way she had marveled at the tiny creatures. Her father's laughter had rung out like music, wrapping her in warmth and safety. The memory shifted suddenly, turning cold. She recalled the day he never came home, the confusion, the way her mother's face crumbled as she broke the news. Mia felt her world shatter like glass, leaving her alone to navigate a gray, empty reality. Tears welled up in Mia's eyes as she pulled her hand away from the nest. The birds hopped onto her finger, its tiny body warm and real. It looked at her, tilting its head as if it understood her pain. "You're a part of him," she whispered, her voice breaking. "All of this is..." The bird chirped again, and Mia realized with a start that the garden wasn't just a magical place. It was a piece of her father's spirit, a part of the joy and wonder he had once shared with her. It had remained hidden in her heart, frozen in time like the glass creations around her. Mia sank to the ground, the weight of her grief finally washing over her. She wept, the kind of deep, cathartic crying she hadn't allowed herself in years. As her tears fell, the ground beneath her shimmered, the glass flowers around her slowly transforming into real blooms of brilliant reds, purples, and yellows. When her sobs quieted, Mia looked up. The garden had changed. It was brighter, more alive than ever before. The glass was melting away, replaced by living plants and animals. But she knew the transformation wasn't complete. There was still more of her heart left to uncover. Mia stood up, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. For the first time, she felt ready to face it all, to bring everything to life. Not just the garden, but the dream she had buried with her father's memory. The next day, Mia walked into the garden with a new sense of determination. The fear she had once felt was now tempered with understanding. The garden was a part of her, a reflection of her creativity, her joy, and her pain. If she wanted to bring it fully to life, she would have to embrace every part of herself, even the parts she wished she could forget. She approached a large glass tree at the center of the garden. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Its branches spread wide, covered in shimmering glass leaves that caught the sunlight and scattered rainbows across the ground. It was the heart of the garden, the source of its magic, and Mia knew it held her deepest memories. She placed both hands on the trunk. It was cold, almost icy. Her heart pounded in her chest as the glass began to warm, shifting under her touch. The tree's surface rippled, and suddenly the memories came rushing back like a tidal wave. She was a little girl again, sitting on her father's lap as he read her a story. It was her favorite tale about a magical garden where everything was alive and filled with color. She remembered how he described it in vivid detail, making her promise to dream big, to never lose her sense of wonder. The memory shifted to the moment after he died. Mia had stopped drawing, stopped imagining. The colors in her world had faded to gray, and she locked away her dreams, afraid that feeling joy again would mean forgetting him. Tears streamed down her face as the tree's glass trunk softened into bark. Leaves unfurled in shades of green. Flowers bloomed along its branches, and the entire garden came alive with vibrant, dazzling colors. The sound of birds chirping filled the air, and butterflies flitted between the blossoms. Mia stepped back, wiping her tears. The garden was complete now, fully alive and brimming with energy. It was no longer just a place made of glass. was a living manifestation of her creativity, her love, and her memories. She realized something profound. The garden hadn't been waiting for her to discover it. It had been waiting for her to remember who she truly was. Mia smiled through her tears, feeling lighter than she had in years. For the first time, she felt whole. Mia sat in the center of the garden, surrounded by the vibrant life she had brought forth. The sunlight streamed through the canopy of leaves, casting dappled patterns on her face. She felt a deep sense of peace, like she had found a piece of herself she didn't know was missing. The bird from before fluttered down to her shoulder, chirping softly. Mia reached up to stroke its feathers, her fingers warm against its soft, living form. "You were always with me," she whispered. "I just couldn't see it." The realization settled into her heart like a seed taking root. The garden wasn't just a place, it was her father's gift to her, a reminder of the dreams he had nurtured in her as a child. It was her own imagination, given form and life. The wind rustled the trees, carrying with it a soft whisper, almost like her father's voice. "Dream big, Mia." She stood up, feeling the strength in her legs, the warmth in her chest. The garden had given her a second chance, a chance to reclaim her creativity, her joy, and her dreams. She knew now that the pain she had felt, the grief she had carried, was a part of her story. It didn't have to be a weight that held her back. It could be the foundation that allowed her to grow. Mia looked around at the garden one last time before turning towards the archway. She didn't need to stay here forever. The garden had served its purpose. It had helped her remember who she was. She could carry the feeling with her into the world outside, sharing the color and life she had found. As she stepped through the archway, the garden shimmered behind her, a beautiful, living testament to the power of imagination and the resilience of the human heart. Mia took a deep breath of the fresh air outside, feeling a smile spread across her face. The town didn't look so gray anymore. She could see the colors everywhere now, vibrant and full of promise. The glass garden had taught her an important truth. Dreams are not just fantasies to be forgotten. They are seeds planted in our hearts, waiting for the light of love and the rain of remembrance to help them bloom. And Mia knew that she was ready to nurture those dreams once more.